Welcome to Wild Turkey Science, a podcast made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow. I'm Dr. Marcus Lashley, Professor of Wildlife Ecology at the University of Florida.
And I'm Dr. Will Goolsby, Professor of Wildlife Ecology and Management at Auburn University. We're both lifelong hunters and devoted scientists who are passionate about hunting, managing, and researching wild turkeys.
In this podcast, we'll explore turkey research, speak to the experts in the field, and address the difficult questions related to wild turkey ecology and management.
Our goal
is to serve as your connection to wild turkey science. Yeah, so I'm excited to have you here, Mark. I really appreciate it. I know Will and I have talked about this a lot, and both of us have been involved in NWTF to some degree over the years, and interacted with you some, especially here recently. So we appreciate you coming to talk to us. Do you mind kind of telling the audience, a little bit about yourself and what your role is?
Yeah. So Marcus, Will, I appreciate the invitation to be a part of this today. And again, just always happy to talk about wild turkeys and research and management and all those pieces there. But so my name is Mark Hatfield, National Director of Science and Planning for the National Wild Turkey Federation. I've actually been staff with NWTF for nearly 20 years within the Conservation Department, overseeing our Superfund program, which is our state chapter allocation of funds to support the mission. Work directly with our NWTF technical committee, which we can get into a little bit later. And then kind of provide strategic direction and oversight for the organization within the conservation delivery side. Prior to that, I received both of my degrees, undergraduate and graduate degrees, from Murray State University in Western Kentucky, and then grew up in Kentucky. Actually have been a part of the NWTF since I was about 13 or 14, where my uncle would drag me to committee meetings in Bardstown, Kentucky, and I would help go out and sell, underwriting core packages and putting on banquets or whatever. So I've been a part of NWTF for a long time. And so, yeah, it's fun. Get to work with a lot of great volunteers, a lot of great partners. And most recently, just trying to reinvigorate, kind of where we're at with research and make sure we're staying on top of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one thing that's really interesting, Mark, is the perspective that you have. After being with NWTF or, in an official capacity anyways for 20 years, and in a volunteer capacity before that. Can you talk a little bit about the changes that you've seen over that time span?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I came on, I came on in 2004 is when I started with NWTF. And so when we came on, we were really at an all-time high for turkey populations. That 2004, 2005 survey, that status and distribution paper that coincides with the symposium, where, we were just right at 7 million birds. We were growing. We were almost complete, across the country with where we were at with restoration, letting birds out of the box. And that made a shift for the organization to expand into some outreach programs. Women in Outdoors came on in the late 90s. Wheeling Sportsman for our disabled sportsmen. And of course, we've always had our Jakes program, but those kind of took front and center and more emphasis moving into the mid 2000s because we weren't doing as much turkey restoration work, moving birds, so to speak. We were early 2000s. We were at really, a large investment in research, but those kind of tailed off once everybody kind of got to this final, hey, restoration is complete, we're moving on. And so mid-teens, 2012, 2013, we launched and developed the Save the Habitat, Save the Hunt initiative as we started to see these declines in unstable populations. Wanted to put an emphasis on habitat, which we'd always had, but when you're deliberate about something, you can get, different results. And so that kind of catalyzed our chapters and kind of took us from our 40th year to our 50th year, and we just wrapped up our 50th. So that's kind of been the evolution within my career. As a volunteer, the reason I got involved with NWTF was I remember turkey showing up on my grandparents' farm for the first time. And to this day, we still get to shoot turkeys on those farms, on that farm. So I was a part of fundraising, doing work, creating this, and probably wasn't as aware of what NWTF did at that point. I was turkey hunter. I was going to the Dick Kirby seminars of how to turkey call, the Jim Schrader show in Louisville, Kentucky, just soaking up everything, anything outdoors. And so that took me to NWTF and just kind of stayed with them throughout my career.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've always been kind of curious about, and I think your tenure spans enough time to answer this question. Do you feel like people get more energized about a species like turkeys and engaged and active when they're doing really well, or when populations aren't performing as well? Because I could see I could come up with like competing hypotheses as to
Mhm.
why one would engage and energize people one situation versus the other.
Yeah. So I would say it probably depends on the individuals or kind of
Mm,
where they're at or their history. You know, I would say that when turkeys are doing well on the landscape, well, I was actually having a conversation last night with a gentleman that was upset about some of the proposed regulation changes in a state. And, he's like, man, I just want to make sure we can get back to where we were. So
mhm,
he was really invested in this. And I think others that are coming into the hunting opportunities in the spring, they don't understand maybe some of the tried and true efforts and all that stuff that has occurred. So I would hope that, you know, well, I think probably generally if something starts to decline or become unstable, people become more aware of what's going on because it's challenging their daily life,
sure.
what they want to do. They're not hearing as many birds on the landscape. They're not seeing birds, so they get nervous and they get, want to get engaged.
Mhm,
When you're kind of flooded, I mean, I heard it in the mid 2000s. They're like, man, why do we need to worry about turkeys moving forward? We're done. We got them.
mm,
And I was a young biologist, probably arrogant, and was saying, man, we need to make sure we don't have to do this restoration project again. And they're
mhm.
like, oh, no, we're good. Well, then we started to see these unstable populations. So I think engagement is probably higher when we have some instability within the populations because people don't want to lose what they had.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That makes
that's kind
sense.
of when I was thinking through that. That's kind of how I have thought about this. I guess the folks that grew up when it was in the heyday and had turkeys, and they know what that's like. It's not acceptable to
Mhm.
Mhm.
to not have that anymore.
Yeah,
So, but I also kind of fear, and I think the quail example is a good one where we turned over a generation after they declined and weren't present over most of the landscape. We kind of turned over a generation, and then it was normal for the next
yeah,
generation to not have them, and you kind of lose that support and enthusiasm that's behind the conservation of the species. At least at the broad scale, obviously there are places where that enthusiasm has been held even for quail, but that's always been my fear, and it sounds like the way you were describing it kind of aligns with that.
yeah.
When we kind of prepped a lot of people to be really passionate about turkeys through that heyday, and now the declines are kind of getting them involved, I guess.
Yeah, it's re-engaging them. Like the
Mhm.
gentleman I spoke to last night, he has been a member of the NWTF since 1973 and a life
Wow.
member since 1978.
Wow.
And so he's been with us for 50 years, as an organization. And I'm like, he was here, when the office here in Edgefield was dedicated, and
Mhm.
so he was angry. I mean, where we're at, and so that's a good thing. You got to wade through some of the the
Yeah.
comments and stuff, but once you really boil it down, it's passion. It's wanting to make sure that his grandkids have got a turkey that he's worked so hard to support moving forward. So it's it's an interesting concept because some people don't worry about it, and I think we've got to recognize there's varying degrees of turkey hunters. There's the avids. That's the
Mhm.
67,000 people that went to our convention last year, which are it's
Mhm.
crazy. But then there's a tremendous amount of turkey hunters that aren't the avids, that are going a couple times a year. So how do you balance those two preferences and engagements?
Hmm. Yeah, it seems like it's kind of the folks that I hear from the most are the ones that are kind of in our age demographic, 30s and 40s, and then older, because we have, we either started kind of around that prime era,
Mhm.
or started hunting well before that peak, in most populations, and so we know kind of what we've lost.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think so. Because, like I said, I remember turkey showing up on my grandparents' farm and going, "What in the world are these things?"
Hmm.
Nobody was turkey hunting in Kentucky at that point, and you had to go to the seminars and the sport shows to learn how to turkey call.
Yeah,
Now it's totally access of information is totally different.
yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
I had a Night and Hail audio cassette tape that I learned from. That was the
yeah.
first turkey calling instructional I had.
Mine,
Yeah.
mine, mine was Dick Kirby. I think he did a seminar at an outdoor show in Louisville, Kentucky, and of course, Night and Hail. They were in Cadiz, Kentucky, there, right where I went, right
Hmm.
close where I went to school. But yeah, I remember. I mean, it was a big time when you drove by and you went to their little shop. I
Yeah,
mean, it was like, man, this their old night, man. This is pretty cool.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
For me, I kind of grew up in a little pocket in Alabama where there were always turkeys, and right in the you may know it, Mark, in the Demopolis area, kind of
Oh
around
yeah,
West Alabama, and the river bottom there. We had them when I was a kid, and the generations before me had them. So my granddaddy and uncles and dad and everybody, they were all obsessed with turkey hunting, and I can remember my mom just sick of hearing turkey calls around the house, and trying to learn that from him. My cousin, who's also in the industry, could make turkey call. He could call a turkey with his mouth with no
oh yeah.
no aid of a call or anything. So it was a. I didn't really attend any seminars. I was trying to think, did I have anything like that? But I think it was really just like a family thing
Mhm.
for me. But when you were talking about kind of hitting that peak, that was also when I was hitting my peak, and I was starting to become an independent hunter, I guess, and really obsessed with hunting right when that was happening. So definitely it was a big influence, on
Yeah,
me and my family and how we interacted as a family.
yeah. My parents relegated my turkey calls to my vehicle. So I could not make turkey calls in the house. So I had the diaphragm calls in the sitting in the console of my old Toyota truck that I you know wailed on whenever I was at a stoplight or whatever.
Hmm.
And so yeah, it's an interesting when you think about how everybody gets into it a little bit differently and what's the trigger point. It's fun, but turkey hunting has been uh, you know it went full circle for me this year. My son killed a turkey with my cousin and my cousin and I learned to turkey hunt together.
Oh, that's
Oh,
And so
awesome.
the three of us killed a turkey. It was my son's. He's 11. He killed his first turkey,
Nice.
and so and thankfully my cousin and I didn't screw it up. We came close to it, but but he killed his turkey, and we got that, and then so it was kind of full circle to be able to do that, and that's something that's unique. That it'll be fun to remember.
Mhm.
What I'm curious what setup your son killed that turkey with.
He had a H&R single shot 410.
Hmm.
Oh,
Marcus has really been pushing the single shot 410 on me, so I might have to
Yeah.
pick up one of those for the kids.
Yeah, so this was a youth gun that numerous people within Turkey Federation's kids have used. So
Okay.
we just kind of passed it down, it's like once our kids outgrow it, that we sell it to the next younger biologist that's got
Oh, that's
kids or
super
somebody,
cool.
and so it's got the old turkey seal on it, the old logo and stuff,
Yeah.
and we got it. And so he's killed his bird. It was 21 yards or something, nice gobbler, but it was just. But it's funny, we found a picture of me, which of course there was no digital photos back then when I killed my first turkey. But I was like 17 or 8. I was 18 before I killed my first turkey.
I was in
mm,
my early 20s.
And my son killed his at 11. And I
Mm.
keep trying to
mm,
remind my son, it's like, man, this is this is
Big
pretty
deal.
special that you get to do this at an early age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I hunted for 3 or 4 years because I was always the third person to shoot. My uncle, my cousin, and then me. So
Mhm.
I was always the youngest, and so back then it was like, man, we got to figure this out. So, but he got to kill a turkey, and we had a picture for Christmas. My wife got that framed with my first. She found my first turkey picture, and then his, and we got him. And I'm like, man, the age difference is like that. Kind of slaps you in the face a little bit.
Hmm. I'm glad they
Yeah.
get the opportunity to do it, though. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
happening more and more.
Yeah, I can remember my granddaddy when I really started hunting. He wasn't getting around very well already, but he would go and listen, and he'd just sit in the truck, and we had a couple of places that you could sit and hear turkeys all over the place, and he would just go listen there. But he'd take me and just turn me loose and say, "All right, go after him." And then my dad kind of did that same thing. And I just remember, in terms of woodsmanship, for me, especially as a early teenager, was really developed by them taking me and saying, "Okay, you hear them gobbling, go get one." And I can distinctly remember several times where my dad would be standing at our kind of on this little hill where we would park,
Mhm.
and we could hear most of the property that we really liked to go to. It was my granddaddy's, and I can remember him hooting repeatedly so that the turkey would keep gobbling that I was going to, so that I wouldn't get too close. I
Okay.
can remember hearing him doing that.
Yeah.
And those memories, just they're really powerful, I guess. And glad to hear that you're getting to share that with your son.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's fun, and again, we've all probably had that opportunity to take first time hunters and whatever, and
mhm.
that's where I get a lot of my excitement and stuff from on this stuff is I've harvested a lot of turkeys and been able to hunt some different places. You know, I've had turkeys in the hand through trapping, and all of these other things, but man, the enjoyment that somebody gets from, just being out there,
Mhm.
and and the excitement is pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
that's what we're all here for, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I know one of the things that we really wanted to key in on today is the Habitat for the Hatch program, and that's super ambitious. I'm excited to talk about it, but before we go into that, I think it'd be good to talk a little bit about NWTF's involvement in research in the past and kind of how that's evolved over time to get us where we are today with the Habitat for the Hatch.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting thing because when we were first founded in '73, we were founded as a research organization to look at Tom Rogers, which was one of our founding members and driving force to get us here in Edgefield. They brought on James Earl Kinnemer in the early 1980s. James Earl's a well respected biologist. He was at Auburn, before Mississippi State. Um, and he was leading the course for us. He was hired as a research coordinator, director of research for NWTF, and so we gave our very first award, it was $2,900, to a project in West Virginia, to Bill Healy, up there, and it was 1978, I believe, late 70s, 77, 78, when we gave that first amount. And since that time, we have provided over $9.5 million of research funding to universities, agencies, organizations that are conducting research for the wild turkey. That's conservatively been matched about 3 to 4 to 1. So you're looking at another $40 million essentially, combined projects. 1985, that kind of was jump started because and reinvigorated again because that's when our Superfund projects and Superfund program came available, where it allowed our state chapters to generate funds for the state to deliver the mission, and many of those states were investing in research as well. Um, so, and I think probably the most unique thing about our research program is it is linked in with our state wildlife agencies. You know, we have programs. It's the NWTF technical committee, and it's comprised of all the state turkey biologists from around the country that sit on state wildlife agencies, and they're actually deriving and directing topics that we need to do research on, which projects we fund, how much we fund them at. And so they're making sure that we're funding the research that the agencies need that will increase their management on the landscape. Management being either habitat manipulation or harvest management strategies or season structure.
Mm-hmm.
So having that link to the state wildlife agencies is key for us because it means that our resources, our dollars, the money that's earned is going to the areas that the states need them. And we're just not doing research to be doing research.
Yeah, I like that model. I know quite a few of the state agency folks involved in that, and it seems like a really solid model to make sure, like you were just saying, that the research is actually meeting what the folks within the state that have their finger on the pulse, so to speak, what they know they need to make good decisions or informed decisions about resource management. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and so that actually they were the driving force around our very first research investments. And then since that time, we've been working with them to do that. This past year, we invested just under $600,000 in research through our national request for proposal program, our largest ever in our history. And then coupled that with our 2022 investment and what our state chapters have contributed, we've invested over $1.3 million in research in the past 18 months.
Yeah, that's great.
And so y'all are looking now at it seems like kind of upping the ante on that with Habitat for the Hatch.
Yeah, it's we're trying to get strategic and deliberate for some topics that I think are going to be regionally specific. And Habitat for the Hatch is going to be helping us do that in the Southeast and I would say Tennessee, Kentucky, South, Louisiana, Arkansas, East, that allows us to look at habitat and the use of habitat for driving forces of how we need to be managing for wild turkeys, right? And how we can manipulate habitat for the biggest impact.
Mm-hmm. So was there a particular like instance that kind of catalyzed you guys to come up with Habitat for the Hatch, or was it just kind of like this kind of a tide that it just built momentum over time and it became readily apparent that this was an issue that needed to be addressed?
So when we think about the development of Habitat for the Hatch, it was a response to what we were seeing across the Southeast and East on poor recruitment and the lack of recruitment and the lack of poult on the landscape, low brooding success, low nest success. And then coupling that with what we know is habitat requirements for hens, early successional habitat, increased forest management. And so then you couple those two pieces with some unstable or unstable turkey populations where we've seen decline, we've seen fluctuations that we hadn't seen before. And we wanted to come out to be very deliberate, and I've used that term a couple of times, but we wanted to say, hey, these are the things that we know can be beneficial to wild turkeys, and we need to be more deliberate because we fund a lot of habitat work, but it may not always be aligned exactly with maybe a limiting factor. And so this was a way for us to catalyze our chapters, our members, and our partners on very specific needs and to have that economy of scale being done across all the states. And so that was one of those things that we wanted to do. We also wanted to provide some goals for our chapters, some targets for our fundraising staff. We talked earlier about when do you have the most engagement for wild turkeys? Well, we got a lot of engagement now. It's people feel it's a crisis. They're concerned, and so now's the time to catalyze. To bring those people together and make a difference.
Yeah, you talking about catalyzing folks over kind of overwhelmingly, has there been positive reception of Habitat for the Hatch, or do you feel like you're, still having some folks that aren't entirely convinced that that's, the best use of that money? Are they wanting to focus on, other potential limiting factors for turkeys, or is it easy to get behind?
Well, I think people are going to self-select to the things that they want
Yeah,
to
sure.
focus on, and so we know that habitat is a necessity for wild turkeys to succeed, and disturbance on that landscape. So we know it's biologically sound. We know that there's going to be people that are supportive of it, but we know that there's going to be people that
Hmm.
don't understand the process that we're in. But we hope that people recognize that there's others that can be working on the other pieces too, right? This
Hmm.
is just the
Mhm.
piece that we've decided to focus on as an organization based on our 50 years of getting work done on the ground. So
Mhm.
that's the key thing, is that people are going to self-select where they go. People are going to be detractors, thinking that it's not right, that they don't see it on their lands, and it's not their problem. But we know that we're not cutting as many trees as we have. We know we're not putting as much prescribed fire on the ground as we historically have. We know we have invasive species control issues,
Mhm.
for plants and in those communities and ecosystems. So we know that if we can do this and we can use turkeys as the driving force, it'll focus on, we need mayfly hatches, we need insects, we need pollinators, we need all those things. We need ground nesting birds. You all both know that ground nesting birds are grassland and early successional bird species that are tied to early successional habitat are on a decline for migratory birds. So
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
and let's
disturbing.
catalyze around that and focus on this, but use the passion for the wild turkey to get some
Right.
more
You're
notice.
kind of having a broad impact. And one thing I wanted to add, thinking through this, and uh, we're hearing, I guess, multiple points of view all the time as well, and it's hard for me to understand the the point of view of the focus not needing to be habitat, I guess. I mean, we have several studies now. We've talked to Mike Chamberlain, we've talked to Craig Harper. There was a study in South Carolina. I don't think we've talked to anybody about it yet, but
North
uh,
Carolina,
Mhm.
North Carolina
South.
with Chris
Well,
Mormon.
there was the
Yeah,
previous
Dr. Morgan.
recent study in South Carolina too. We haven't
Yeah.
talked about the current ones, but the previous.
So we've all across the southeast, especially, but it also is remarkably consistent even up into the Midwest and Upper Midwest with the folks that we've talked about. We're looking at situations in all these study areas where we can add the nesting and brooding cover together, and
Mhm.
we're still not even close to double digit percent of the landscape.
Oh yeah, I mean it's
So,
we
to
know that the limiting factor, that
yeah,
nesting and brooding habitat and adjacent and proximity of that for, the longer that bird, I mean, you think about it, the longer that bird and has to walk its poults to an area that it can, bug,
mhm,
is just, more susceptible to something happening, right?
yeah,
And then you throw in the demographics of land ownership of what it is today. Man, you start thinking that used to be 1,000 acres that was one person managed under one
mhm,
regime. Now it's 20 people
yeah,
that are managing that, and so
yeah, and
this
they
makes the
converted it.
land. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that.
Yeah.
Right. They all the early succession is converted into pasture grass. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
we could just layer on and on and on and on, and
yeah, yeah. I
it
mean,
could.
but it's so yeah. I think you're right. It is an ambitious goal for us, um, but we feel comfortable. We feel like it's very attainable. With the way that our chapters have always rallied around it. um, and focus their efforts. And
Yeah.
that's been one thing for us is we've had very good volunteers and members that have you know it made the right choices.
So, Mark, I was going to ask you in terms of the vision for Habitat for the Hatch. I understand the objectives, I guess, at a you know a less fine scale. But what about what is the vision in terms of how much of that is in research to develop information versus actual funding going into efforts to restore or maintain habitat?
Yeah. So research will be a factor within this. Have we partitioned out that X number of dollars are going to go to research? We haven't. Have we
Mhm.
partitioned out that we want it to be partitioned out by state for habitat work? We haven't
Yeah.
gotten into those goals yet because
Okay.
we've kind of thrown these things out there and said these are the topics, right?
Mhm.
And now we need to figure out um, where you have the greatest groundswell or local involvement that can make the biggest difference, so you can see those results, and then that'll spur more investment into those areas. Research, we've kind of tackled this research component as two things because we have the ability to go around and fundraise around Habitat for the Hatch. It
Yeah.
gives a very regional or geographically limited area in which donors could come to NWTF and say, hey, I want to fund this piece. I want to be Habitat and Habitat for the Hatch, or I want to fund research, and I know it's going to be used in that geography. Then we have our national request for proposals that we do for research that has the same topic or the same habitat manipulation, habitat BMP scenario within the research. So somebody could give to that and we could use it in Habitat for the Hatch area,
Hmm.
based on the proposal. So we try not to be real prescriptive, especially when it comes to research, of going to a state and say, we have to do research here because you have to have the investment. It takes time and you've got to have other resources because we're not solely funding these projects. So it's probably going to be the next step once we see how everybody reacts, what's everybody's interest. And that was a very similar process we used for Save the Habitat, Save the Hunt when we threw that goal out of 4 million acres conserved or enhanced. We didn't tell any state which piece of the pie they wanted or
Hmm.
needed to do. They came up and said, well, we're going to take this piece. And then they've got ownership of it and then they drive it and they sell it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that flexibility at a local scale it probably brings a lot of benefits with it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but I wanted to go back real quick to something that you mentioned a minute ago, Mark, where you actually used the term ambitious, and and I think with habitat, it's not necessarily controversial. I think most people, turkey hunters in general, think better habitat is never a bad thing, even if they think that it's some other limiting factor that is primarily responsible for the population declines we're seeing in some areas. But I think that where they get hung up is sometimes the next step, which is, what can we actually do about it? How are we going to implement these changes that we know are needed at scale? And
Mhm.
that's kind of the thing that you guys have decided to undertake. And to use ambitious, I think, may be risking understating the situation here.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I mean, when you think about where we're at, number of ownerships, all of these pieces, land ownership, it is. I mean, it's scary when you think about, and we probably need to do a lot more than what we even set out to do, right?
Yeah,
Because is 1 million acres of early successional habitat enough?
yeah,
It probably isn't, but that's our piece of it, right? And then hopefully this will bring light to other people going, yeah, that is important. And we're
yeah,
going to do our piece to that. And we can't do exactly what they're doing, but we can do this. And so
yeah,
we have to, there's a balance from my perspective in my tenure with NWTF is you've got to set a goal that's challenging,
yeah,
that's going to change behavior.
yeah,
And then you don't know the ripple that that's going to create within the pond that you threw that pebble into, you know? And so that's it's probably not enough, and again, I'm not to discount, organizationally, we've been able to impact almost 23 and a half, 24 million acres in our
hmm,
tenure, 50 years. That's a lot of acres, right? It's still only the size of South Carolina.
yeah. I was gonna say
You
that's
know,
not quite Alabama scale yet.
it's not
That's
Alabama or Georgia
30.
scale or Florida scale,
Hence
but
Alabama's or something.
but it's like, wow, that's a lot. But when you
Mhm.
look at the amount of turkey range we have out there, it's not a lot.
Yeah,
So we've got to find different ways to engage people and find different ways to connect activities to the right thing. And
Yeah.
turkeys, if we can do that, turkeys respond.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, and I want to be clear. I'm not being skeptical. I'm really kind of applauding you guys for being ambitious in that regard,
Yeah.
because I get frustrated when, oftentimes we know that there's not necessarily a solution to something that's going to help significantly, but people just aren't willing to do it because they think it's too hard. And
Yeah.
Marcus and I have these conversations as researchers all the time where there's, a really key intuitive aspect of turkey biology or management that we don't understand, that has never been addressed with research. And the reason that hasn't been addressed is that it's hard to answer that question because of the experimental design or the expense associated with that. But somebody's
Yeah.
got to do it eventually, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so why not roll the problem out, right? And
Right.
be comfortable with, even if we don't reach the results, or it's not exactly we crossed the threshold, man, directionally it's the right thing to do, and so, and then you can regroup, re-engage and figure out the next step, right? It doesn't always have to be the perfect fit. Let's go for a direction versus a destination. And I think that's where our staff have done a really good job with, Habitat for the Hatch. I mean, it balanced, organizationally, we're a membership organization. We need something that resonates with our members, right? We need to generate funds so we can invest in our mission. We need to ensure that our credibility as an organization is doing the right work at the right place, so we have credibility with our conservation partners. So I think our staff have done a great job of balancing those pieces when they developed Habitat for the Hatch, because I think it does resonate with most people. Now, some people are going to say it's not habitat, it's something else. Okay, well, we need to be okay with that. And we say, hey, man, that's great. Why don't you work on that other piece and come complimentary to us?
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to add, I was thinking through this, and it's part of being a leader. You're taking it, making you've all decided to make an ambitious goal, and while it may not fully solve the issues, it is signaling, what the issue is that you all think that we need the catalyst for to get more people. And I think that's kind of an intangible thing that happens when you do something like this. Like you're taking this ambitious goal, and that signals to everyone else, oh, this is the direction that we need to try to align and go. And then you start to snowball, right?
Yeah,
other resources coming in, state agencies start looking for ways to match funding with you. Lots of things start to snowball.
It does, and it is that snowball thing. I mean, I'm sure I would have loved to hear, and I've been lucky enough to talk with a lot of these individuals, but not as a group. Some of the conversations when the goal was set out that they were going to restore turkeys to the contiguous 48, and I'm sure people were like, "You guys are freaking crazy," But then it was like, "Well, yeah, we can do our piece of that, right? And we can do, yeah, okay." And then all of a sudden, it's that snowball effect, and all of a sudden, we go from 1.3 million birds to 7 million. And there's like, wow, that was pretty damn impressive.
Well, I think a natural tendency of people is to think, like with your example there, is like, oh wait, you're going to go and put birds in all these states this year? Like, no, that took you 30 years.
Yeah.
Like
It takes some time to do that.
Yeah.
And I think one thing too that I've really applaud our volunteers in the past, and I think we've got the culture now, and the volunteers are going to do the same thing. They've always stood up and have done what's right. They used to take their most prized possession of a wild turkey and ship it to another state. They were working so hard to get their state population somewhere, and they're going, yeah, okay, we'll give you that other. And it was this collaboration process. And so these initiatives, such as Save That or Habitat for the Hatch, gives them to be a part of something larger, and it makes them recognize that, hey, all of my things matter. Moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's one of the unique aspects of wild turkey conservation that I really appreciate, is that compared to like white-tailed deer, obviously another conservation success story, the 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 restocking and the rebound of turkey populations is a little bit more recent, by a few decades in some places. And so there are still people that remember going through that entire process and kind of understand how fragile this all is. And so
Yeah.
I think that makes them more ambitious to help out and to do their part.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you all asked the question is when is the engagement the highest, right? For turkeys and investment there. There is more wild turkey research going on right now across the country than ever in the history of wild turkey research.
Mm-hmm.
The mid 80s, early 80s and stuff was probably rivaled where we're at today. But I know I would say dollar figure wise, of course, it's totally different because of scopes and scales of these projects are totally different now. But the research being done now, there's more research projects just in pure numbers that are being done now than there ever has been.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Up until 2022, for our organization, the highest watermark we'd ever made an investment was from the national bucket. It was $250,000. Well, we hit 380 last 2 years ago, then we hit 580 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Our state chapters have increased there, so we're financially supporting 24, I think, projects across the country. And we do so in various ways. We work with agencies to purchase stuff for them. We provide donations to them. We do our national RFP. But man, the amount of research going on right now is crazy, and we need to capitalize on it and make sure it's the research we need, moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting time, and honestly, that was one of the reasons that we, developed this show. It's the same kind of thing. It's an opportunity to try to provide a connection, I guess, to what's going on in these different places and to what's been done on turkeys to try to help people right the ship.
Yeah, it's people's thirst for knowledge is out there, and we need to provide the platform for them to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
Back in during COVID, we started a cocktails and conservation Facebook Live scenario with me and Brett Collier and Mike Chamberlain. We talked about conservation work, habitat work, mostly research questions. Man, those things were hits, and I think by doing so, it's providing better information, which then provides better support for the state wildlife agencies when they need to make hard decisions to adjust and to manage through these unstable populations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know we've gone through several topics, and both Will and I really wanted to get some an overview, I guess, and some details about the Habitat for the Hatch. But also one of your big events is coming up, the convention, and I know that you're kind of actively in the planning stage right now of that, and probably pulling your hair out and running around trying to figure that out. I can't imagine what that's like for the scale of that event. But
yeah, it's kind of crazy, but it's fun.
He's been involved in this for 20 years. It's probably easy for him by now.
Well, that's the dangerous part of this, because it's like, well, shoot, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, you don't worry about it, the stress level, but then you're like, oh crap, we got 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Yep, this has changed, but
you don't have that fear-based motivator anymore because you've become accustomed to it over time.
Yeah, you're just kind of like, okay, yeah, but I figured it up the other day. This will be my 20th convention. All but 2 of those have been in the Gaylord Opryland Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been there for 128 days in that hotel. Just working at the convention.
Spent almost a year.
So I know every little freight elevator where we need to go and back ways of stuff, So if you all are there this year and you get lost, I can give you some pointers.
I'm going to need you to hand draw me a map.
Yeah. The key to getting around the Opryland Hotel is the colored carpet.
Yeah.
everything's tied to the color of the carpet that you're standing on.
Yeah, that's good to know.
That's probably why I always get lost. I'm red-green colorblind.
Yeah. So there is lots of red and green.
Yeah.
There's a green section and there's a red section, and so you're pretty much out of luck, Will.
My strategy is I just wander around until I find where I wanted to go. And
Yeah.
if I don't do that, I can always stop and just feed the ducks.
Yeah, feed the ducks. The other step is another key for the convention is once you know how to get somewhere from point A to point B, always go the exact same way. If you
Yeah.
feel like that you're going to go, oh, this is a shortcut, you're screwed. You're not going to make it.
Don't tell them where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't take the shortcut.
Yeah. Well, do you want to talk about the importance of that event, and
Yeah.
what would you want folks that are listening to know about it? And
Yeah, so our convention it's got a couple of different, I guess, successes of it. One is it gives us an opportunity to really recognize our volunteers, partners, members for their hard work in the previous year.
mm-hmm.
So we have several events that we recognize them on the stage, we recognize their hard work, and we, hold them up for the work that they've done for the past year. That's from fundraising, that's from habitat delivery, government partners. We get to recognize some, law enforcement officers of the year that all of our state chapters do. So recognition is a big key for our convention. The other piece of that convention is, it's a consumer show. We have, I don't know how many acres of, it's probably 500 to 600 vendors that are going to be there this year that are all everything wild turkey, everything hunting, that people can go in. If you're a member, you get in free, and you get to go to that event, and you get to go and see the latest turkey calls, the custom calls, go to all of those pieces there. Buy decoys, get camo, and just really, it's just a sports show.
Mm-hmm.
And then another piece of it is we recognize and bring in our conservation partners, our NWTF technical committee that I mentioned. We get to provide seminars to those staff, to our other conservation partners on current research for funding. We get to talk about some of our NWTF programs to them. They get to talk about theirs. And then we have, fundraising that goes on. It generates funds for the organization. So this is a springboard to a great year. It just really is. It's best time of the year. I think mid-February, when I'm always driving back from convention, I'm completely tired and worn out, but man, I'm recharged.
Yeah.
Because
stimulated
spring
for sure.
is just right there.
Yeah.
You just I get recharged because it's like, man, this is why we're doing it. Just last year we had 67,000 people come to Nashville for that event.
That's one thing I was going to ask is it's got to be one of the top few sports shows in terms of size in the United States annually, I would guess.
Yeah, there's a Western Hunting Expo that's typically right around the same time. You've got Pheasant Fest, and for PF and QF, those are always big. They're 35,000. I think the Western Hunting Expo probably rivals us. But then you have the two non-consumer shows, which is the Archery Trade Association and SHOT Show.
Sure.
And those are buyer groups. So
right.
Yeah, in the East, we're by far one of the largest, or if not the largest, sports show, consumer show convention. And, we will have the chief of the U.S. Forest Service there. We will have state agency directors there, technical committee partners, researchers. And I think the beauty from the conservation side of things is we have all those people sitting next to each other, having conversations about what's going on, all in the name of the wild turkey. Now, they may do things differently, but they may not mention turkeys and what they're doing, but they're benefiting turkeys for the work they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like, I'm sure for you it's a really stark reminder, but it's kind of like telling you, okay, turkeys are about to start gobbling. Look at all the excitement, the number of people. I know when I was there last year, it was a bit overwhelming. But then also reflecting on, it's like, look how many people are just eat up and love turkeys.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how can you not be excited about that?
Yeah, yeah, it's like that's a wonderful thing to think about. That we've got all these people that really care about this resource, and that is exciting and reinvigorating. When we're all doing our part, trying to help the resource, to know that we have that kind of support in the community is really cool.
Yeah, it really is, and it's fun. Like I said, there's people that I only see at convention, right?
Mm.
But you make friends, and then you reconnect, and you're able to have a drink with them or share breakfast with them or something along those lines, man. And it's fun. But man, they're long days. Our staff works their tail off, our partners work their tails off. But yeah, I mean, but it's worth it. You come back and you're kind of brain dead for the next week. But man, it really sets the stage for our year moving forward.
Yeah, good. I know Will and I plan on coming up, and I guess be more involved. I will be this year with giving an update on things here in Florida, and you've got several other researchers that are doing the same.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to do that. But
we've got researchers from North Dakota, South Dakota, the Great Plains area. We've got researchers coming down from Pennsylvania, Tech Committee. So yeah, it should be a pretty good sample of some of the projects we're funding. And these scales of these projects have gotten so large. There's a project in the Northeast going on right now that spans like 5 states.
Yeah.
They're using all the same methods. They're using the same, transmitters. They're using all of this stuff. So, man, think about being able to pull all that data together. And I know there's several states that are doing the same thing here in the Southeast. And that's, it's that snowball effect of let's erase some state lines and let's work on some regional stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. A lot of that low hanging fruit that is easier to address at a smaller scale has already been done. So we're kind of at the point where it's the difficult questions that are left that require that kind of multi-state collaboration.
Yeah.
I think it's going to take that kind of effort, to figure out what we can scale that's going to make a difference and turn populations around, right?
I mean, it really does, and I saw it just between the last 2 requests for proposals that we did. There was more collaboration. There's been more collaboration across state lines the past 2 years than I've seen in my tenure for research. And now, granted, we didn't fund a lot of research in the previous years just from COVID and some other stuff, but these past 2 years, they're multi-state projects and projects that are building upon other projects that somebody else did. So, I mean, just that collaboration back and forth is great because it's like, man, the scales of these things are growing bigger. And another thing that we're working on is we're working with the state agencies across the country. We've got about 30 or 31 states that are contributing to this now. And they're standardizing the way they collect recruit or recruitment data.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Into one location. And so they're gathering it the same way. We're putting it in one database, and then we're providing that access to the state agencies to access that so they can see. That way they can compare what's going on in one state to another state.
Yeah.
And so before we couldn't do that because they were just all a little bit different. So nobody accepted those results. So now we've said, let's normalize it, let's standardize it, and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, we've talked about that a little bit on the show before, but turkeys being a non-migratory species, they don't have that, that overarching body of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that's kind of coordinating all the efforts among each state. So, I mean, somebody else has to step in, kind of, I think, and play that role. It would be nice to have the same amount of resources, from the feds as we do for migratory species, but we aren't there yet. But at least we do, start to see some coordination happening.
Yeah,
and movement in the right
that's
direction.
exciting. It's something we've worked on a long time, and and that was actually that was kind of developed through our NWTF technical committee. Is that it was a biologist in Missouri that said, "Man, why don't we standardize this stuff?"
Mm-hmm.
And then she's a grouse biologist now in Pennsylvania. We hate to lose her in Missouri, but she's still an ally for us. But she's helped us standardize this. Our technical committee oversees that, and so that's that body that's kind of, making sure that the data is collected, making sure that it's uploaded, making sure it's accessible. So they've kind of taken on that to themselves. And NWTF, we're just providing some resources to make that, to build the data set, to have access, and to make sure that it's, kept up.
Yeah, I think that is a critical thing, the collaboration, and also making sure that we're open, I guess, with the data and that it's accessible. I mean, one of the projects, as you know, that we're working on here in Florida that you guys are helping to fund is depending in part on that data, that pulp per hen data. That we can start to do things over spatial and temporal scales that can really start to answer questions that you just can't do. You can't address any other way.
And we're also trying to make sure we provide stability within the research area as well, because we're looking for ways internally as an organization to build an endowed account to where we have funding and we have annual funding for research, pulled off of an endowment that we're creating. We're looking at ways to figure out how to, invest in university programs, at an endowed level potentially. So there's ways we're trying to tackle this differently than we've done in the past to accommodate for the scale and the needs.
Yeah, that's another good thing, and with like an endowed, essentially that lets you get take advantage of the good times, but also get through the bad times in terms of consistent funding and a consistent mission.
I mean, and that's going to be critical because we know research is going to have its ups and downs. We're always not going to be able to stay on the trend we're at, but we've got to, we've talked about generating the next group of hunters, right? That next cohort. Well, we also have to generate the next cohort of researchers that are interested and willing to do work on wild turkeys, right?
Yeah.
And so if we don't have that,
I'm pretty worried about that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are, but there aren't very many enthusiastic researchers to take over faculty positions anymore. That doesn't seem like it anyway.
Yeah, that want to focus on turkeys. They want to focus on what their interests are, and so we need to provide opportunities and find ways to recruit the younger demographics, or that to have opportunities for them to do that work coming through graduate school or postdoctoral opportunities or whatever. But turkeys need to be a topic, and how do you maintain that?
Yeah, it'd probably be surprising to a lot of our listeners to realize that there are fewer and fewer people that not only don't want to work with, or it's fewer and fewer people that want to work with turkeys, but in general that applies across a lot of game species. I mean, we just don't have a lot of PhDs working on applied management of game populations anymore. So, I mean, if you're one of those younger folks in our listening audience that's thinking about it and wants to go to college for 10 years, we're glad to have you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the stats are exactly, but we're talking about often single digit, but usually not more than 50% of the student body as undergraduates are interested in game species.
Oh yeah.
And that's declining. And then if a fraction of those go to get a master's degree, and then a fraction of those go on to get a PhD, which is generally a requirement in academia to be in one of these research positions. That we're filtering down to such a small number of people, and it seems to me even that the transition from the master's to the PhD, usually the people that are interested in game are less interested in taking that step. So that's a different part of this whole system that I definitely think is imperiled.
Yeah, I mean, I know when I went through school, I graduated from Murray with my graduate degree in '03. Man, there was a probably the majority of my undergraduate and most of the graduate students that I worked with didn't hunt. They didn't
Mm,
even recognize hunting as a they respected it,
yeah.
but they didn't hunt themselves. And so that
Hmm.
you couple that with what you were saying, game versus non-game. Um, and I can tell you this too, that there's more jobs in the non-game realm. There's
Sure.
just more non-game species, right? So when I left, graduated Murray, I went and worked on a waterfowl project and bald eagle project for Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. Went and worked and oversaw some research for Ducks Unlimited on the prairie potholes, and then I went to um, Montana and worked on prairie dogs and black-footed ferrets and
Mm.
rattlesnakes. And then from there, I went to work for Arizona Game and Fish, where we did work on turkeys. And that's how I got connected to the Turkey Federation, or professionally connected to the Turkey Federation.
Mm,
Because one of the research projects that the Turkey Federation funded was one of the projects I oversaw for Arizona Game and Fish in 2003. We were trapping birds, trapping Merriams in in Arizona. But the other projects were bald eagles, bats, Sonoran pronghorn, pygmy owls, burrowing owls. I mean, it was all these other random things. And
Hmm.
so random not being bad, but it's like, man, dude, there's not as many jobs out there for the game biologists.
mhm.
And, you know, we need to make sure we're recruiting the next generation.
Yeah. At all levels, it doesn't work if you don't have all the levels,
Yeah.
and that are affecting the resource involved.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably spend a whole episode on that.
Yeah, because I'm assuming. Well, I know Marcus, you were, and Will, I see the turkey mounted in the back there. You all were turkey hunters before you all were, you know,
Hmm.
in the positions you all have now. And I was a
Hmm.
turkey hunter before I'm in a position I am now.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, I would not be here if I hadn't grown up doing that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so
That,
Same for me, not turkey hunting specifically, but hunting in general drove
yeah,
yeah.
me to this career
so
path.
yeah, I mean, and so I wouldn't be here, but I couldn't have told you that I would be sitting where I was sitting. That wasn't the ambitious goal. I was going to be a biologist for the county I grew up in, right? That was kind of what I thought. And then, you go to college and you have other doors open for you and you take advantage of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought I would end up with a PhD, and I can tell you, my mother has told me the same thing several times. She cannot believe that I did that. But it's a passion, and it just one thing led to another, and then I started seeing, maybe that's an opportunity that even I can do that. And I also
Yeah.
saw the writing on the wall that you know programs at universities are going to need people that focus on applied game
Hmm.
research. And you know, I just kind of decided through that process to keep on. I'm glad I did now, but uh, 15 or 20 years ago, I would have never thought that it would be me.
Hmm. Same.
So, but it all started with hunting as a kid, and developing that passion. So, take kids.
I wake up surprised every day that I made it here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of the same way. I mean, I'm like, dude, this is fun. Nothing but fun.
Yeah.
There's been some challenges. There's been some, you know, war stories that are probably better told over um, glasses of bourbon or a beer or something. But it's fun. It's just, man, we've got so much opportunity, but we've got to really honor the past of what we've done.
Hmm.
Making sure we don't regress, and that's where it's kind of that pressure cooker, and that's what kind of drove us to get out in front of it organizationally. Excuse me, let's say that or Habitat for the Hatch.
Hmm.
It's a we owe it to the people that have got us to this point for the first 50 years to make sure we're focusing on the right stuff moving forward.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Good
Yeah.
stuff. You have anything else you'd like to share before we sign off today?
Um, No, I mean, I just want to say thanks. Thanks to the listeners. Thanks to you two. Appreciate what you all are doing to communicate research across the board. Looking forward to hosting you all and seeing you all in Nashville.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it too.
If I look have a little road rash or something, just give me a pass on that one, and we'll circle back. But no, it'll be a good time. But again, we need to do this more often. There's a lot of stuff going on, and we're happy to engage you all. I know you all work with our staff across the board. We've got great staff. We have man, they're passionate. They're good, and they need to be recognized. And of course, hats off to our volunteers that are leading our chapters at the state level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely some unsung heroes there.
Yeah.
I guess as one of the closing questions to you, Mark, if folks are interested and are not yet involved, what's the best course of action for them to take if they want to contribute?
Well, there's a couple ways. One is, again, you go to NWTF.org. It's our website. That'll provide some information about the organization. But what it'll also do is it'll provide you ways to find your local event, in your communities that we have to fundraise and to raise funding for the mission of the organization. So that would be first and, the best way. Not everybody likes to go to banquets and have the live auction or the silent auctions to fundraise around. But you can donate directly to organizations. You can donate to specific areas of interest for the organization. So I think those are the key things. And I remember, I met the guy, my first turkey I killed when I was 18. And the guy that I met working and participating in a banquet was the guy I killed my first turkey on. They're welcoming. They're there. They want to help. They want more people. And they're doing it for the right reasons. So I would say get involved with a local chapter and attend an event and see what you think and go from there. At NWTF.org, you can get that information.
Okay. Yeah, we'll link that in the show notes. All right, guys. Well, very informative. I appreciate it, Mark. You taking the time, to fill us in on the things that are going on. Really look forward to seeing you next month at the convention as well.
Yeah, and looking forward to it. Hope you all have a good rest of the spring, and we will connect in Nashville.
Sounds good. See you in a few weeks. Appreciate it, Mark.
All right. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks, everybody out there. We appreciate the support. Everybody listening.
Wild Turkey Science is part of the Natural Resources University podcast network and is made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow, a grassroots organization dedicated to the wild turkey. To learn more about TFT, check out turkeysfortomorrow.org.